Growing up, my gaming experiences were incredibly limited.
The rules were, if I was too sick to go to school, I was too sick to play video games, I couldn't play rated T games until I was 15, and the focus of today, no handheld consoles.
Even though I was born only a few months before the release of the original DS, and I was the perfect undisclosed age to enjoy the 3DS when it released. Not in my house. My parents, like so many others, did this because they didn't want me to become some insociable basement dweller who only talks about video games. Love you, Mom.
But what this also did was leave a huge gap in my video game knowledge. One of the things that domino affected into this channel as we know it now was my nerd-ass friends playing Who's That Pokemon using their type and their gen and stuff like that off the top of their heads.
I felt so left out that I went home and spent the next 3 years beaming Nintendo information into my head like a psycho. I've gotten really into handhelds over the past few months, and if you've paid even the slightest bit of attention to my shorts, you could probably pick that up. Even though I didn't have any growing up, I've always been obsessed with the idea of gaming on the go. Power in your pocket. The creepy PS3 baby. That's not related to handhelds, I just think about it a lot. So I'm going to talk about a bunch of handhelds today, starting with... The GBA has an insane library of games. It has the Minish Cap, and if that was the only good game it had, I would still say this is a fantastic console. But it has so many more. Pokemon's Fire Red and Leaf Green, Metroid's Fusion and Zero Mission, Mario Kart Super Circuit. Let's pick a better Mario title. Mario Party Advanced shit. Plus, it was one of the first handhelds to have one of its standard models come with a backlight in the form of the GBA SP. I can already hear your sweaty gamer fingers. Actually, the Game Boy Light was a regional exclusive to Japan and not a standard model. Fuck you. It also set so many precedents for upcoming consoles, the most obvious one being the clamshell design of the SP, which technically started with the Game & Watch, but again, fuck you.
Not being battery powered like a fucking Neanderthal.
And a lesser known one, backwards compatibility. Not really that it has it, but more how it does it. The Game Boy Advance doesn't emulate Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. It has Game Boy Color circuitry built into it, which is dope.
The value provided with the Game Boy Advance is something that hasn't been matched since. It could play 3 generations of handhelds.
Imagine if the next handheld that Nintendo releases could play not only Switch games, but go all the way back to 3DS games. That's insane to think about.
The GBA is a console that you can pick up and just feel the hours of fun that people have had on it. I can just tell how many kids secretly played this console late at night and then quickly hid under their covers when they heard their mom coming.
It gives me this sort of second-hand nostalgia.
And before I move on, I'd like to quickly mention that the only cartridge game that I have for this console is a reproduction cartridge of Pokemon Radical Red, which doubles as a dust cover for my DS Lite. This is the grimy-ass yellowed pink DS that used to belong to my friend's sister that I bought from him for 20 bucks. I freaking love this thing.
It's still the second highest selling console of all time, and for good reason. The game catalog is unmatched. If you look at the Pokemon games alone, it should tell you that. Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Black and White 2. Then you gotta look at stuff like Mario Kart DS, Brain Age, Animal Crossing Wild World.
The original DS and DS Lite did a similar thing to the GBA in terms of backwards compatibility, but this time instead of just having GBA circuitry, the DS and DS Lite had a whole separate CPU dedicated to the GBA. With the exception of the Switch, this is easily the console that I've spent the most time on, thanks to my R4 card.
An R4 card reads a micro SD card and lets it play games on the DS, meaning as long as my SD card reader doesn't corrupt the files, which happens a lot, and I almost lost all my Pokemon and I was really fucking pissed off, you basically have access to every single DS game ever made, including ROM hacks.
Most of my time with this thing so far has been spent playing Pokemon Platinum, specifically Pokemon Mogul Platinum, because I'm a little fucking fanboy. But if that's what it took to get me into Pokemon, I'll take it.
There was a solid chunk of time at school where I didn't have any friends in my lunch, and my solution was, I kid you not, to sit alone and grind Pokemon. This was like last month. I'm still in school.
The other thing I love about the DS is the fact that everyone had one.
When I would whip it out and start playing it during downtime during class or at lunch, people would usually tell me that it's sick. Like, we all know the stereotype of the kid who will bring his Switch to school. He's me. But there isn't that same feeling with the DS because of the nostalgia around it.
I love watching people's faces flood with memories when they see I'm on a DS, and I've even gotten people to dig out their old DSs. It's fun.
The DS was partly responsible for bringing gaming to the masses and even had a console design geared specifically towards older people. The DS did so many things incredibly, and it set a really high bar for its successor, the 3DS. Oh my god, did this console struggle.
Revision after revision after revision. Price cut after price cut after price cut.
This console took a while to get off the ground. It had 5 revisions. 5 of them. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
The DS and the Wii taught Nintendo that they need to work smarter, not harder.
Instead of cramming the highest end tech into their consoles, Nintendo banks on gimmicks.
For the Wii, it was motion controls. For the DS, it was dual screens and a touchscreen. And for the 3DS, I'm gonna need a clever boy to help me figure that one out.
The 3DS released when 3D was all the rage. People were going to see Avatar, and that's it. But Nintendo thought they could bank on it for their next handheld. And it gave everyone migraines. Plus the console was way expensive and yada yada. Long story short, there are 6 DS models and 2 of them are 2DSs. Despite the failure of its original launch, even though it would go on to sell like 70 million units, it's a fantastic console.
This is the console I got most recently. It's a midnight purple 3DS, which just got a bunch of dead pixels in the top screen, which fucking pisses me off.
The 3DS has seen a bit of a resurgence in the last few months. Maybe it's because people are just now realizing how good the console actually is, or maybe people are just suffering from a super early sense of nostalgia. While I love the 3DS, it has a fantastic library of games and has a ton of little things that make it a vast improvement from the DS. It doesn't have nearly as much character. It doesn't look like a new handheld or a more powerful system. It looks like another DS. Both the DS and the Game Boy Advance had so much character in their design that an average person could look at them and say,
These are different.
but if you do this with the DS and the 3DS, they panic. So while it has more power, different games, and a completely new gimmick, it doesn't have as much identity.
But on the other hand, it's got fucking Smash Bros.
People were losing their minds when they saw this. The ability to bring Smash on the go, like, it's still the best and most ambitious decision that they made for the console.
I love my 3DS. I bring it with me almost everywhere I go, which is probably why those pixels died. But I definitely bring it with me more than I play it.
And finally, that brings us to the Switch.
This is the console I've had for the longest by far. My sister and I both got our Switches on Christmas the year after it launched, thanks to our grandparents. The Switch is without a doubt my favorite console out of all of these, and it's pretty easy to understand why.
It has 2 of the greatest games ever made, plus like a lot of shitty Pokemon games. But other than that, the overall Switch library is fantastic. Luigi's Mansion 3, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Metroid Dread. Plus it was the best place for all the Wii U orphans to go after their system failed. Mario Kart 8, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Super Mario 3D World.
All with the ability to take them on the go. That's insane. The first time I ever beat Mario Odyssey was in one sitting in tabletop mode on my dining room table.
My one gripe about the Switch is that while you can take it places, it isn't very portable. With the DS, I can throw this thing in my pocket and pull it out whenever. With the Switch, I mean, technically, but there's no way you're getting into an airport.
Even if you have a Switch Lite, you still need a bag to carry it in.
This console has introduced me to some of my favorite games of all time and some of the best games ever made. Plus, giving me the ability to experience older games wherever and however I want. Hear me out, hear me out. I know people hate this thing. And I do too, fuck Mario Sunshine. But honestly, I 90% bought this for Super Mario Galaxy.
I've said in a previous video that Mario Galaxy is the first real game that I ever played and is responsible for getting me into video games.
I would spend hours in my living room on the Wii playing this, and now I can bring it wherever I want. I can play one of my favorite games wherever I want, with or without motion controls, in high definition. There is no console that could do that except the Switch. Plus, with the storm that swept through lockdown known as Animal Crossing, the Switch is now the 3rd highest-selling console of all time, right behind the DS. And that's the last Nintendo console I'm going to talk about. So now it's time for PSP. I don't know much about it, but it plays God of War. PS Vita. I watched a guy play Splunky on this like 5 years ago, and I've been looking for a cheap one ever since. Steam Deck. Fucking dope, but it's $400 and I have no money. The true experience of a handheld is nothing short of magical. It offers both an experience and a luxury that you can't get anywhere else. The ability to play games whenever and wherever you want.
In the car,
In the park,
or in your own room.
If you're on a budget and wondering what handheld you should get, then I made a short about it a little while ago and you can find that here. If you like this video, please drop a sub. I do this weekly. And with that, have a good day.